You're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network.
Friends Talking Nerdy. If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
We're sitting here, and I'm holding a cat in my hand. This cat's name is Annie. She's a little firebrand, a spitfire, just loves to run around, and everything is always fascinating for her. She's always happy, always excited, and wants to play and jump around and get into everything. And we love her to death here, as well as her mama, Mimsy. And guess what? They're welcoming you, just like we are, to the latest episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd coming at you with another episode. We thank you all for tuning in and sitting next to me in the flatulent chair. We have the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey.
Hello, and welcome to the show on this sunny day in Portland.
Yeah, I mean, I was inside most of the day, standing up, pretending I was a professional wrestler and gouging my head to have blood go everywhere, but yeah.
Now, when that happened, what was the response?
I was in a cubicle today, and when it's something only a tall person could do if you could see where it was, and you could see how silly I was, because normally situations like that are, if I'm down in between, because I had to read something too, and the desk was down really low, so I had to, read it that way, and then just hit my head up, just the edge. Just hit the top of my head. My head is bald. Like if I had hair still, I think it would, have still bled the way it did. But I think it would have been hidden. And like I said, it did bleed a little bit, but basically it was just, it wasn't like going down my face or anything like that. It just primarily stayed up. I just, dabbed, and, like after a minute, that went away. So it wasn't like a severe thing. So nobody at work really knew about it. I just went about my day because it's not my first bruise. Like on my right knee here, I think you can still see it. You see that bruise? Mm-hmm. I got that when I was 5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was like running, and it was a visit at my dad's house on Travis. And I was running on a sidewalk, tripped, and just scraped my knee. That's how. And then later that day, did it again on the same
knee. Oh my God, that hurts just to think about.
Yes. So scars happen, and like the older you get, like this hitting on the head is kind of like the time that the teenage story I told about, where I was skipping through the house and hit like one of the eaves of the in between the dining room and the living room, and had blood going down my face, but it. Just like then, it like hurt, but, I wasn't like nauseous, I wasn't sick, I wasn't lightheaded or anything like that. Okay, it's not you, Mimsy. This is the thing with cats. When they, when they finally see their humans going off and doing something fun, especially when they're young, they get super excited and want to join in the fun. They see the fun that we're having here. But, Annie's kind of going a little wild here. Cover for me a minute.
Yeah, Annie is going a little wild, and Tim is the cat whisperer. So when I'm here and they're acting this way, I just kind of let them do it. Tim tries to, calm them down and redirect them, and...
As best you can. I mean, they're not dogs. With dogs, you have to be there and regiment everything. Cats gonna be ultimately like, fuck you, I'm gonna do this anyway. So you have to know, to me, it's like you have to know when to pick your battles. If their actions are getting destructive to where it's hurting stuff in the house or could potentially hurt them, of course you step in. If they're just getting, like Mimsy loves to hop on top of the fireplace. There's a ledge over the fireplace, and she just loves to hop up there and look around. I'm not comfortable with that whatsoever, but the worst thing she's done is knocked off a Polaroid picture of Sherman. That was on there. And if that's the worst that she's done in the 2+ weeks that she's been here, I say she's shown that she can relatively be trusted, but still, me is like, please don't do nothing, please don't do nothing, please don't do nothing.
Yeah, but she probably does it when we're not here.
Yeah, and I'll have to talk to my son just how much he... Of course, Mimsy had to play along because there's no Annie. I got Annie in my hands. But I'll have to talk to my son to especially find out, like, what, his relationship was with computers and the cats. Because, you've had more experience with the cats around a computer than I have. Mimsy had more experience with the cats and computers here, and as you can attest, they really love computers.
They really love them, and I think it's, a combination of it's warm, it's something that you're paying attention to, and so they want, like, your attention, so they're trying to intervene, and then they just like to see your fingers moving.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the humans doing it. That's the most awesome creature in the world. It must be interesting, like your massager, your hardcore back massager that could probably break asphalt. You were just earlier kind of using it on your sore shoulder, and the cats, especially Annie, was looking at it like it was the most magnificent thing in the world, and she had the cap on it. It's like, how does this go? Ooh.
Yeah, and like that, I was afraid they might hurt themselves because it is a really powerful, like, thumping massager that you would get, at a physical rehabilitation kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not a massager for your grandma. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Or not one of those massagers either.
No, you wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to meet the woman who would use that as her massager. It's like, let's get ready.
Well, anyway.
On that awkward note, you just came back from a wonderful vacation. Tell the folks about it.
Oh my gosh, I did come back from a wonderful vacation. So I went to a regional Burning Man event called Soak, which is held in the Thai Valley, which is a little east of Mount Hood. And it's high desert. It's really beautiful. Canyons, and the White River flows through it. And it's a big festival that people put on. It's very participatory, so people just form groups and come up with ideas of fun things to do, and then we all go to the same place and do all the fun things and camp out. And so the focus there is really on just like, how can you have the best time possible? And that's a wonderful kind of vacation where there's lots of variety of things to do. It's a beautiful place. It's relaxing. You get to be with people you really like.
Like Bible study and nature walks, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Totally, all week.
It's lots of dancing, lots of electronic dance music, dancing. There's lots of art. It's very focused on art, particularly art that uses LEDs. Because, most of the time half the time it's night. And you want to be able to see the art even at night.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, so an example is a friend of mine made a tether ball that had LEDs, and so it lit up at night and changed every time it got hit. So people could come play tetherball and it had this cool LED effect. Mm-hmm. Lots of fire dancing, lots of things that I call poofers, which are like pieces of movable art made out of metal that release flames. Mm-hmm. So, for example, there was a giraffe, and it had, two little horns like a giraffe does, and the flames shot out of those horns. And I got some really cool pictures of that kind of stuff. There are also workshops and yoga and speed dating events. There was a booth where you could talk to God. Just wacky shit and fun shit and free food. And it's just, a really, really loving and focused on good times, good vibes, and really kind of refreshing change from the normal world.
Nice. And there is talk, folks, that we may have a special episode in the works.
That's right. About soak.
Do you want to fill the folks in with a small preview on what we could potentially hear on that special Aubrey-specific episode?
Well, I think the listeners can look forward to hearing about various activities that took place, talking about my camp and the gear that we used, important things to consider if you're going to a multi-day festival, and what it's like to work at a festival as a volunteer.
Okay, we have Mimsy on the other office chair right now. She's never done this before, but she just climbed to the top of the professor's chair. Fucking fuck you, Mimsy. Because of course they have to do that, but I, for one, am excited to hear it. It's always been kind of a dream of the show because I want the other folks that are a part of this whole enterprise called Friends Talking Nerdy to feel like they have the power to be able to create something on their own that doesn't involve me. So can't wait to hear the results of the Aubrey-only episode.
Yeah, me too.
Exactly. All right, we are here this week for a very special reason. Annie, goddamn it. We are here to honor the memory of Tina Turner. The queen of rock and roll has sadly passed on to the age of 83. Now, as far as the conversation started, that's something we can start off at first. You know, a lot of people, casual music listeners, if they heard her music, may not necessarily categorize her as a rock artist. But, you know, if you listen to her documentaries, read her books, interviews, stuff like that, you know, if you asked her what kind of music she made, she would say rock and roll. Always. Even in the era of the 80s when it was all just, you know, keyboards, you know, doing the heavy
Saxophone.
lifting, or the heavy lifting for the music, but you know what I mean. But she, you know, she considered herself a rock and roll artist. And, you know, because of that, you know, I feel it's important that we take our time here on this platform, as I grab Mimsy, on this platform that we have, small though it may be, to talk about the life and career of Tina Turner. Now, I have full disclosure. I'm going to openly admit that, you know, she's an artist that I would put in my greatest hits category. I've talked about it before. You know, bands that I absolutely love, will listen to anything. Your greatest hits album, your greatest hits artists who've made enough that if they put out a greatest hits, I'm buying it. But other than that, not the album. Artists who I made like a song or two, like Taylor Swift or something like that, but generally not a fan. And then people I just don't like. Tina Turner is going to be in the greatest hits category as far as the music. But, you know, one thing I didn't get a chance to do while she was alive, unfortunately, which I think was her primary draw, was seeing her live.
Absolutely. I didn't ever get to see her live either. I believe my mom and dad did. I think she came and performed with the symphony. Like a Pops kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they went to that, but I'm not sure. I think maybe that was Ray Charles. It's hard to remember.
That would have been cool to see too, Ray Charles.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I had a chance to see him in the 90s and passed on it because all I knew of him was him as the Diet Coke pitchman.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't realize his history in music. And I felt so foolish watching the biopic Ray. And like hearing the music for the first, like I've heard, you know, like Hit the Road Jack, but I'd heard it in other forms. I didn't hear the original. I also didn't know the story behind it, you know, because it's not exactly you know, like the women that are singing that song, you know, kind of were pissed off at Ray. You know?
For good reason, right?
But yeah, like I know Tina did in the 90s make a stop at the Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and just, you know, timing wise and also interest wise at that time, I ended up passing. Now, I didn't have a lot of disposable money, so, you know, for me, most of my fun money was, like I've mentioned before, it was going to the movies more than anything else. So I didn't have the mindset at that time of, you know, see these artists while you can, you know, which I would implore on anybody out there. If, you know, if there is an artist out there that you either adore or just respect, and they're still alive and they're still touring and they're coming to your town, take some time to go see them. Even if they're old, even if they're in their 70s and their voice isn't what it used to be, their music playing skills isn't what it used to be. These are the legends that created the music that shaped a culture. My goodness, take time out of your day to go show them respect by watching them play, you know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, there was a concert last night here in Portland, The Cure. And I would love to have gone to that. You know, tickets were so expensive, though. And I think that's a real barrier for people to get to see those kinds of people who they really admire and have enjoyed over the years. Is the ticket prices are out of control.
I mean, that could be an episode in and of itself, because Ticketmaster they're shady. Let's put it that way, and that's putting it nice. I mean, when you have a situation to where when you purchase a ticket, the fees that they add on to the ticket price ended up costing more than the actual ticket itself, that's a damn crime.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that is making it to where, you know, it's making it cost prohibitive for the average person to go on any sort of a regular basis. I'm not talking, you know, major concerts every week, but, you know, back in the day, you used to be able, if you heard the Rolling Stones were coming to town, you had the ability to save to, even if it was just a cheap seat, it was still a cheap seat. But now those cheap seats,
$100.
Yeah, it's
way up in the nosebleed section where you can't see anything.
Yeah, and
except watching them on the Jumbotron, which why not just watch it from the comfort of your own home?
Yeah, so maybe don't go see them. Fuck them. They shouldn't be. No.
I mean, because I went to see Lizzo, and I paid $162.50 per ticket, and saw Lizzo, loved it. We had good seats, we had a good view, we had a good time, but at the end of the day, she put her show on HBO Max, maybe, and I was able to watch it again on TV, and I was like, oh, I kind of like it better on TV because I got to see more of the dance. I got to see dancers close up, and so, you know, I think there are some, you know, cool things that happen where you can actually see the show, like David Byrne's remake of the Talking Heads album, Stop Making Sense.
The movie? Or what are you talking about? Because I know they're re-releasing the Talking Heads movie from the 80s, or they may have already done it, but there was like a 40th anniversary re-release that was supposed to happen, and David Byrne did some promotional material for that. You know, as far as anything new that he's adding on, I know he's got more Broadway stuff in the works, and he made a song that kind of pissed off some of the Broadway unions.
Oh yeah, what?
I don't know the specifics, so I can't speak on it. But my understanding is that he wrote a song addressing some issues he's had with unions in Broadway, and they were not happy about it.
Well, you know.
Yeah, shit happens, but
First Amendment and all.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Tina Turner. What is your first memory of her? First-ish, obviously. You know, I mean, if you know what that first memory is, great. But just your first general impressions, I guess.
Well, I know I heard it as a very young child, because my parents had some Ike and Tina albums and listened to Ike and Tina. But I don't have a really specific memory of her until the 80s, when she reemerged in her solo act and had the huge hit with the album Private Dancer, and the single What's Love Got to Do with It, which is her most popular number one hit.
Yep. any memories? Was there a particular video that drew you to her? Was it her work with back in the movies with Mad Max? Because of her reemergence on the popular music scene, she was able to get in movies again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was all those things. You know, I loved the way she looked and her style. If she was the kind of artist that I wanted to be like, as you know, some artists I was like attracted to, but some artists I really wanted to be like or looked up to, and she was one of those. Because she just seemed wise from that point. You know, she seemed not bubblegum. She seemed real and knowledgeable and experienced. And I loved her videos. I loved all the clothes she wore. I thought her hair was awesome. Her legs, amazing. And she was kind of the person you could look at and say, you know, I don't have to go gently into the puffy, squishy world of not doing much, you know? I could be as active and amazing as Tina Turner. Like, but she's so driven and she was so driven and such a consummate performer that, you know, that's not what it was about for her.
Yeah. For me, yeah, I mean, we're part of the same generation. I mean, I became acquainted with her in the 80s. At the time, I wouldn't say I was the biggest fan in the world, but even then, I still respected her. I knew she was someone that, you know, carried something. I didn't know what at the particular time, but, you know, the older I got, the more I became aware of her history in music because, yeah, like her story, like even today, it's hard for a black woman in her 40s to be able to try to do something in a creative field without, you know, people thinking you're just too old. It's not going to sell in the sticks. You know, the fact that she was able to come back, especially from that horrendous marriage that she had with Ike Turner, which was discussed not only in the biopic "What's Love Got to Do with It," starring Angela Bassett, but in that HBO documentary from a year or so back that you know she was a part of. You know, talking about the experiences with Ike, and you know. That got me thinking this week in preparation for this episode. I think Ike Turner is if you have someone in your life who thinks that cancel culture is really a thing, you know, in terms of you make one mistake, people are going to forever shame you and make sure you don't work, point to Ike Turner. Why do I say that? Because there's somebody else in music history who has a pedigree, who has a name that we all know, who was very open about the fact that early in his life, in his 20s and 30s, he was very violent towards women on multiple occasions. That person was John Lennon. And I am not excusing what John Lennon did in any way, shape, or form. John Lennon himself was not trying to excuse his behavior. He openly talked about how he had issues with his anger that were not resolved at that particular time. He was able to show, and there is evidence to show this, that he did put in the work to make amends as best as he possibly could. And to me, I think, you know, if you look at Ike Turner and John Lennon, you know, for just that issue alone as it relates to cancel culture, you know, to me, you got to take cancel culture, this idea of publicly shaming somebody, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because egregious behavior does need to be called out. And if that involves shunning, then yes, let the shunning happen. But generally, generally, majority of people will take the time to recognize the work somebody puts in to make amends. Now, I'm not implying that, you know, victims, for instance, have to forgive. They don't have to forgive. It's cool if they do. It's great if they do. But they don't have to. You know, and people that have been...
Yeah, I mean, I think people misunderstand amends sometimes, and they think that it has anything to do with the victim or the person that, you know, bad behavior was aimed at. Mm-hmm. Whether it's violence or, you know, emotional abuse or confrontations or, you know, other types of undermining.
For me, again, to me, that is something people should keep in mind ultimately when it comes to, like a big name or somebody, somebody who did something pretty egregious, and just remember that at the end of the day, if you truly are putting in the work to make amends, generally people will accept that, and you won't have to have that burden of being socially shunned anymore, because with, as far as like Turner goes, like he had a website when he was alive, and I've read a couple interviews with him to where he talked about his marriage and his response, and I'm paraphrasing here, folks, but it was essentially, it happened, but not like that. It wasn't that bad. And that's not showing humility. That's not, because yes, it is possible. It is 100% possible to have a different recollection of how something happened, because that's just how the memory is. But just doing what he did shows that he's not getting it. And I think that is the reason why Ike Turner will fade away. He's already pretty much faded away, even though he had a single in the mid-'50s that is generally considered to be the first rock and roll song, Rocket 88. And he deserves it. He deserves it. He deserves to be forgotten for hurting Tina Turner and his family the way he did, and for not taking the time to reflect, make amends. Because again, John Lennon, Ozzy Osbourne too. He was so high on drugs one time that, he beat and almost strangled his wife. Thankfully it didn't happen, but he came out of it in jail. And he realized at that particular time, it's like, I love this woman. Why the fuck did I do that? And he made the changes. Is he a perfect human being? By no means. But, like what we know of Sharon Osbourne now, at least her public persona, we don't know her privately and all that. But I get the impression that if he did that again, like I don't think he'd be alive,
Right. Yeah. She's pretty tigerish. And she too, she really is a woman who took on her own persona in life, and she didn't live in the shadow of Ozzy. She sort of made her own way.
Yeah, and that was, after the 2000s. I do remember in the 90s, Howard Stern actually used to have Ozzy and his whole family on his show on a pretty regular basis, before the reality show. And, it was cool, like, at the time, hearing them all talk now, with the prevalence of reality TV and whatnot. All I want to hear Ozzy do now is sing. I don't need to hear about his family life anymore. But that's them, I guess. But as far as like Ike Turner goes, like I said, he deserves to be forgotten. He really does.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
How could I not agree?
And most importantly, like I think to me now, with everything that's going on in my life, it's also inspiring in a lot of ways to see what she did to build herself back up again. Especially she, and it was covered in the movie, covered in her biographies and all that, but she specifically made sure that, she didn't get any money from Ike. She didn't get, residuals or anything like that. He got to keep all that. But the Tina Turner name, like her birth name is not Tina Turner. That was a stage name given to her, and she fought to keep that name. And that was the biggest and the best way of doing a fuck you to somebody like that, going off and doing really the impossible. Because again, like I mentioned, like, a woman in her 40s today in a similar predicament today in the entertainment industry is going to have probably just as hard a time getting back into the spotlight as she experienced in the 80s.
Sure.
I would hope some things are better, and I'm sure they are. But, women in entertainment, whether it's music, movies, TVs, whatever, are, you hit 40, you're gone unless you're really, really talented or unless you're Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
But her story is inspiring. Her story is inspiring because at the end of the day, you have something that traumatic happen to you. I don't think people would be blamed for, just like vegging out or something, or just giving up on life. She didn't give up. She kept fighting, and she came back better than ever. And now, does that mean that every single person who takes inspiration from her story is going to have a similar output, have similar happiness? No, but that's not the point. The point was that she fought for it. It's great that she got, the prize at the end, but the whole point of going towards your creative goals is going towards your creative goals. It's not about making money. It really is not. And if you're doing something like podcasting, music, movies, books, whatever, solely focused on what money you could potentially earn, stop. Mm-hmm. You got to do something like this for the passion of it. And she did it for the passion because she knew she was good. Now, in terms of her music, like one thing, especially the 80s stuff, as she called herself the queen of rock and roll, I mean, like I mentioned, there are some people who would not think her music today is rock and roll, at least the music from the 80s. But there was a time to where rock had a lot of different flavors. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Even in the 90s, you could have your Metallicas, your Nirvanas, but you also had your Blues Travelers, Alanis Morissette, Hootie and the Blowfish, not the biggest band in the world, but you get my point. Just different varieties of rock. Look in the 70s. I mean, James Taylor, rock. Even though it was just him mostly with an acoustic guitar. Like Fleetwood Mac started off as a hardcore blues band, and then Rhiannon's, Stevie Nicks came aboard and they became a completely different band, much more mellower than, their origins at the start. But, rock used to have a lot of variety. And, I think that variety did include keyboards. Mm-hmm. I've told that story before about Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top when he went to a Duran Duran concert. And then after the concert, came up to them and they thought he was just there as a fellow music person. They thought it was just going to be a hi, thank you, bye type of deal. But he was inspired by their music. He was inspired by their synthesizers because he recognized that, even though they were using synthesizers to create the sonic sound, they were still following, the rules of the blues, mm-hmm. For a lot of their stuff. And, I mean, and I think that's what I think people should take to heart when it comes to Tina Turner being labeled the queen of rock and roll. Now, I think more than anything, I think you would agree with this, Tina Turner made albums so you would go see her live. Her main draw was not her albums, if that makes sense, because of, how she performed. She
was an amazing performer, right? And so her albums, I think she would always support her albums with tours, and just put on an amazing show as a live performer. Not that I ever got to see her, but I've seen her on videos performing, and it's amazing.
Tell me about it. I mean, whether it's, going all the way back in the 60s to watching, the Ike and Tina Turner review on the Ed Sullivan Show doing Proud Mary, or, something that, she may have done in the 2000s. I think she was a part of one of those VH1 Divas specials that they did. They had a couple of years in a row to where they would have like a special concert and they would have like Cher, Carole King, Aretha Franklin, all together doing like a big divas quote unquote concert, which is another misogynistic thing if you think about it. Why do women that are older than 40 have to be a diva? You don't have names like that are attached to guys that get together for a concert like that. Mm-hmm. Listen to me growing up, folks. It took over 300 episodes, but we're getting there slowly but surely.
Yeah, I mean, nothing you say is, like, you're not true or, like, news, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, just imagine the one person that's listening to me when I just said, is like, what? I didn't know that. But what we do here at Friends Talking Nerdy, when we get the chance, there have been some artists that we've let slip through the cracks, like a David Crosby, and maybe we can come back and revisit that at some point in terms of doing something like this. But when a major musical artist like this passes away, we do a playlist episode, but it's slightly different. What we did in this particular case is we both took our top choices, 10 each, and combined them together because we knew that again I think you mentioned that Tina Turner would be in your greatest hits category of artists too, right?
Yeah, I think she would because, when I go back and I try to, what were the songs that I really liked, it's about an album's worth.
Yeah, so what we did is, we both came up with 10 choices. We had a lot of overlap here, which left us with a total of 15 songs that we're going to talk about here. Compared to other music deep dives, we won't go too far into the weeds in terms of, judging the music. We're not going to rate the music saying, hey, listen to this song or don't listen to this song or, the bass track on this one was just not the way it should be. We're here to honor the legacy of Tina Turner and what she did because, it is so damn inspiring in so many ways. She did so much for so many people in music. Her actions during the course of her life are going to have benefits for so many women, that countless women for many years to come, just because she fought and kept on fighting to be able to, do what she does best, and that's get on stage.
And control her own business affairs.
Exactly. And not have a dick control things, a dick. But we got 15 songs here. We'll go through them track by track, give some thoughts on it. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's go.
All right, track number 1 is from a movie soundtrack. Now, some people may remember that in the 80s, Tina Turner was in a couple of movies, and we will get to that later on in this list. But the 80s were not the first time she made an appearance in a film. I believe her first film is from this particular soundtrack here, the soundtrack for the movie The Who's Tommy. In the 70s, I believe it was Ken Russell who directed it, had an all-star cast of, not only The Who, but Elton John sang Pinball Wizard. You had Jack Nicholson singing in that particular movie, and Margaret, who was really damn good in that movie. She actually released a single recently that Pete Townsend helped her out with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but anyway.
I knew this was going to be your choice, your first choice. I knew it because it comes from your favorite rock opera.
Tommy from The Who was one of those albums that could blow your mind, but also make you realize the limitations of rock too. Because it blew my mind that, you could have an album that told a story, even though it was a very loose story if you're really being honest. But, the whole concept was a story, much more complicated than, what the Beatles did with Sgt. Pepper. Sgt. Pepper was a theme, an idea. This was telling a story from first track to last. And, the song Tina Turner did in the movie was The Acid Queen. And her role was pretty damn scary. Mm-hmm. Because she's a character that gives acid to people to change their minds. She gives it to Tommy in his case. Tommy's a deaf, dumb, and blind kid who saw his father kill his stepfather and stay with his mother, and was told, you can't tell anybody what you saw. So he become deaf, dumb, and blind, quote unquote. But they bring him to the woman who gave him a lot of drugs, and she's creepy, but intentionally creepy. She's meant to be creepy in the movie, so I'm seeing that in a good way. But the whole scene at the end too, where she puts Roger Daltrey, who plays Tommy, into this almost like a mummy's tomb, the stand-up caskets that mummies can be in movies, where the door will close and the door will open or something like that. They put him in, and they implied that by putting him in, he was also getting needles injected into him, and had drugs going in and everything. But she gave a rather haunting performance, both in the movie and on the particular song, so I had to include it. But the next one here is one, too, that was recommended by someone in our Fans of Friends Talking Nerdy Facebook group, Riza, who, interesting enough, I've never met her personally, never spoken to her apart from a brief chat, but she was the hiring manager at the first place I had an interview for when I came back to town. I didn't ultimately get the job at that particular place, and with my situation being what it is, and with the job that I currently have now being what it is, that was a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways, because I think for me, what I can handle right now, the job that I'm currently having, I'm going to have a much better experience long term than I would have had at the original place, which is why I think ultimately they didn't take me.
Right.
But
we're overqualified.
Something like that, yeah. But she recommended this particular song here, the best.
Well, this is one I like. It's, from the early 2000s, I think.
I thought it was simply the best. I thought that was one of her 80s ones.
Simply the best.
Let me find it.
No, I really think it was a little bit later.
We'll keep talking.
Let's find out. So, I really like this song. It was on my list as well. And, I think what's nice about it is that it's so positive. And, it's one of those anthem-like songs that you play at graduation or like a wedding reception or something. It's a very cheering song.
Yeah, in 1989.
Oh, I was wrong.
Tim's right.
Tim was right.
USA. I get it, though. It is one of to me, it kind of reminds me of We Are the Champions.
Oh, uh-huh.
And that type of, simply the best, yeah, we did it, type of deal. So I did not choose this particular one, but, it's definitely a good song, definitely emotional, too. And that's one thing I forgot to mention about Tina, as far as one of the first things I remembered about her hair.
Mm-hmm.
In the 80s, at least, her hair was like half the length of her body, rising like 2 feet above her head and then like halfway down her back.
In this weird lion's mane kind of look.
And it didn't look bad.
It looked awesome.
It worked for her because
I really wanted that hair, and it did not work for me.
Yeah. But definitely agreed. It's definitely a good song, but it's not like the third song on the list here. I think this is, along with All Along the Watchtower from Jimi Hendrix, this is one of those songs that shows that cover songs are not always a bad thing, for one, and two, it shows that sometimes the person doing the cover can actually claim that song as their own, like Jimi Hendrix did with All Along the Watchtower, like Johnny Cash did with Hurt. Proud Mary, Ike and Tina Turner. Proud Mary, it's a cover of the same song from Creedence Clearwater Revival, and John Fogerty, who wrote and sang that particular song, has come out on multiple occasions stating like it's her song. Like listening to his take on the song, which is pretty mellow. It's a good song. I mean, the Creedence, it's a good song, but it is mellow compared to what Tina did. Even the song from the album, just how it starts out rolling on the, just how it goes slow at first, and then the music just fucking kicks in like you're getting kicked in the head by Tina's high heels, and you can't help but feel energized when you hear her sing this song, whether it's on the album, whether you sing, watching a video of her in concert singing this album, whether it's from the 60s, whether it's from the 90s, like she made this her song.
Absolutely. And the dancing. Oh my Lord, the dancing. And I just love to see her perform this song. And it's just, almost a flawless representation of her at that time.
And it's something I wish we could see more of in terms of not Annie playing with shit. I wish artists would go out of their comfort zone more and start having fun with songs from different genres. What if Metallica covered a Lady Gaga song? What if Lady Gaga covered a country song? What if Missy Elliott did a country song, or you know what I mean, a metal song or something. You can bring something else to, a classic, because the Creedence Clearwater version of Pride Mary is a classic in its own right. I just wish I would see more of. Now it may already be out there, and I welcome you, if you are listening to this at home, if there are other examples of cover songs that I'm not thinking of, throw them my way. I love a good cover song, but this has to be up there with one of the best cover songs ever made.
Oh yeah. I would say it's definitely one of the best.
All right. Speaking of best, it's not going to be this one. No, I'm kidding. She did a James Bond song.
She did,
and it was the song from my era. It started off my era of James Bond with Pierce Brosnan. Mm-hmm. As a kid, I was really into Remington Steele.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when news broke out in the 80s that Pierce Brosnan was up for the role, I was super excited, but then I got pissed when NBC uncanceled Remington Steele, thus ending his chance to play James Bond in the 80s, mind you. Mm-hmm. That's why Timothy Dalton got the role, but after the poor showing of License to Kill in 89, there was a few years to where there wasn't a Bond movie, and then I think it was like 94, 95 or something like that. They finally came back with Albert Broccoli's final film that he produced in the James Bond series, GoldenEye. Mm-hmm. With a song written by Bono and The Edge.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, I am not going to proclaim that this is my absolute all-time best favorite Bond theme song, but it is Tina Turner. It's not like From Russia with Love. It's not that either. She put her soul into it, and it in a way with how the Bond films can end up becoming after the fact. It was a nice, almost mellow-ish way to kind of kickstart the Pierce Brosnan era of Bond, and it kind of
sort of
unassuming but traditional in the Bond music type of role, because it's only been during the Daniel Craig era that they've started embracing the rock or R&B elements more explicitly. Generally, it's they would have the sweeping orchestras, mm-hmm. Or something like that, which I thought she did really, really well in. But GoldenEye.
Yeah,
GoldenEye. This next one here is one that has really grown on me. I've been listening to it a lot the past couple of weeks here since we've heard of her passing. But another song from Ike and Tina Turner, "River Deep, Mountain High." What are your thoughts on that?
I just love this one. I just think it really shows her dynamism and her
blah 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 blah.
Her, the videos of this. I mean, I'm just, I can't think of her without thinking of her in that fringe, that really long fringe dress, doing this song with her long hair, with her bangs, back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And just the dancing. All I remember, you just think of her and you think of the dancing, and this was one of the ones that she really let loose on. Speaking of that, I read an article. I mean, a lot of these articles have come out since her passing, but when Lemmy, the creator of Motorhead and lead singer and bass player, was asked who his favorite performer was, he said Tina Turner. And I'll go on in a second here, folks, but I got Annie in my hands because she was being annoying, but she's trying to get out of my hands, and it's pretty darn cute. It's pretty darn cute. She has no hope because Tim has really big hands, and he's got both of them on her. But she was just airplaning her arms and kicking her feet.
If I keep doing it, I can escape.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but Lemmy saw Ike and Tina Turner in concert, and he talked about how it opened up with like the Ikeettes and the band playing, and he liked one member of the Ikeettes, but then Tina came out, and that blew him away. And he was open about how again, she was one of his favorites to see in concert, and as a metal fan, as a fan of Motorhead, it's great to hear that.
Oh yeah,
because I think he fuck you unless you're going to bed. Good girl. Okay, because music has a way of bringing people together, and and yeah, like you can. Like him finding out that he saw Tina Turner and was that awed by her, it's like I can also get it based on how he acted in concert. I'm not saying he danced like Tina Turner at all, but in terms of controlling the stage, I think he definitely took pointers from her and how to do that, because again, if you've seen video of her in concert or had the pleasure of seeing her perform live, you would get my point. Like she was because there's a debate in rock too about whether certain people are showmen or show people, or singers. Mm-hmm. Like John Lennon would have been a singer, whereas Mick Jagger was a showman. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they're both singing, but, John Lennon just stood there, whereas Mick Jagger was all over the stage, doing his stuff there. And, I think she definitely falls into the show person category. But River Deep Mountain High, I mean, listening to it, I'm kind of surprised like Quentin Tarantino hasn't gotten his hands on it for one of his movies, because like this, as far as the sound goes, I mean, Phil Spector may have produced it, or it may have been inspired by his Wallace sound that he stole from Nashville. But it's intense. It is an intense song, especially when she, kicks into the chorus, singing River Deep Mountain High, just intense and really, really, really good song. But speaking of that, there's a cover song that Ike and Tina Turner did here that I had to include on the list. Honky Tonk Women.
Honky Tonk Women, really?
Mm-hmm. Cover of the classic from the Rolling Stones, and again, if you are questioning why she is called the Queen of Rock and Roll, put this song on and you will understand why. I mean, the beauty of what she did is that, yeah, she was able to dabble in a lot of different musical genres out there. And, ultimately, one reason I think that, she should be called the Queen of Rock is how, I think rock stars from the era that we grew up in and before were about controlling the stage, controlling the emotions of the crowd. And, I think that's where she falls. And, Honky Tonk Women, her version, damn good. I'm a Stones fan through and through, so I'm still partial to the original folks. But really, really good song.
Absolutely. It's a great song.
Yep. All right. The next one here is one that you added, even though it does have a little history from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Ooh. Let's Stay Together from her Private Dancer album. Why don't you talk about why you added that?
Yeah. So I loved the whole Private Dancer album. Like, I think every single one of those singles is gold. And this is one of them. And, what's love got to do with it? Private Dancer. These were all songs of like heartache or not getting what you need out of relationships. But this one, Let's Stay Together, was really kind of a hopeful one of like, sometimes there are troubles, but let's stay together anyway. And, not those kinds of troubles, not Ike and Tina Turner troubles. But, like, you don't like to watch the same TV show or whatever. Yeah,
miscommunication more than anything else. Of course, it's a cover of the classic Al Green song, and I've mentioned it. If there's a celebrity from Grand Rapids, I will mention it on the show. He's one of them that sadly I didn't find out that he was raised in Grand Rapids until the late 90s. And damn the whitewashing of music history, you know? Like, I shouldn't have found out about Al Green from Pulp Fiction.
Right.
I just shouldn't have. That's a crime. I'm glad I did. Let's be 100% clear. But, you know, music history being what it is, if Al Green were white, I would have learned about him much earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to move on to the next one. And this is a unique choice because, again, Tina Turner was part of the music industry. And that means sometimes, you know, you're going to be doing some guest spots in other people's work. And there's an album put out by one Frank Zappa in the 70s where Tina and the Ikettes sang backup vocals. It's a song called Montana. It's a typical Frank Zappa song especially from this era in the 70s, to where, you know, he made it no secret that he loved sex, you know, and he was also just weird too. But, you know, he a lot of times would make songs that were just dirty as hell, intentionally, just, you know, to get a reaction. But then, you know, you'd have unique stuff because the Tina and the Ikettes, you know, singing my lonely dental floss. that may not be quite the lyric, folks, but, you know,
something like that.
She was singing about dental floss, folks, and I love that Tina Turner guested on a Frank Zappa album. I mean,
yeah, you know, that's what I get the feeling from her, that she's just game. She was just game for whatever was happening. Like, she wanted to be in it.
Yeah, I mean, she loved performing, and what I loved too, that this shows especially, I mean, is that, you know, it shows that she had an interest in music as a whole and not a genre. Mm-hmm. You know, to her, it was about just loving the fuck out of music. You know, whether it's a goofy Frank Zappa song or, you know, one of her big hits, anywhere in between, it's about performing. And, you know, as a performer, like, she didn't have much in terms of writing credits, for instance, but, you know, she understood that she can still make those songs her own. And, you know, the backup vocals on Montana is not much. It's not like a duet between Tina and Frank. I'm not implying that, but it's still very much her. You know, it's like you just hear her. You can just imagine her thinking it's silly, but, you know, her and her background singers were having a good time.
Oh, I'm sure they had a good time doing whatever they were doing.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go on to the next one here, and this is from Live Aid. It's a concert, and we actually saw the video of this duet here between one Mick Jagger and Tina Turner. It's a medley of State of Shock and It's Only Rock and Roll. State of Shock was a hit off of Mick Jagger's first solo album in the 80s, and It's Only Rock and Roll, of course, was one of the Stones' staple hits from the 70s. And, you know, as we saw too, this was the part where at the end of the performance, Mick ripped off Tina's skirt. Mm-hmm. I did read up on this beforehand. He specifically asked her, you know, before the show, hey, does that skirt come off? And she knew what he was planning to do. I mean, she talked about it in one of her biographies, and also to pointing out the fact that she had a longtime crush on Mick Jagger as well. So when you have a crush on somebody and they say, hey, can I just happen to take off your skirt? You're probably not going to say no.
No. No, and she was right to take it off because she looked amazing.
And I think that's another thing we can talk about with Tina too, is how she always was a positive embracer of her sexuality. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I think back to like some of the videos of her singing with like Ike and Tina Turner, and the way, you know, she would, you know, sing with a microphone sometimes would make me jealous of the microphone. You know, but she was always at the forefront in a lot of ways of embracing her sexuality, not in a way like Madonna. I mean, she didn't have to come out with a book about it, but, you know, it was always, she made it. You know, she was always out, even in her later years, with the short skirts and the dancing and all that stuff, because it was just, this is me. And that is definitely beautiful. And, just watching the performance too, like when they're singing It's Only Rock and Roll and there's, shoulder to shoulder looking at each other. It's just like, like if one of them just had the courage to say, hey, you want to go back to my dressing room? Who knows what could have happened that night?
Well, and who knows what did happen that night? We certainly don't.
Yeah, probably lots of cocaine, but it was the 80s.
True that.
All right, the next song here, not the best for either artist, but I definitely, when I heard it, I had to include it here. It was a song that Tina did with Santana, The Game of Love. Now, by the sounds of it, it sounds like this was in the era of the late 90s, early 2000s era Santana, to where, let's be honest here, he was essentially a side man for other famous people, and yet they still slapped his name on the album. Not a bad thing, because, Carlos Santana will go down as one of the greatest guitar players of the 20th century. And if that helped, if that album that he did in the late 90s is what it took to get people to realize he still existed and to buy his work, then damn it, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And, this song here, The Game of Love, again, not going to say it's the greatest song in the world, but it's definitely one that if it's on, you're going to listen, you're going to enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. The next one here, you've already talked a little bit about it. It is the title track from her classic reemergence into the public spotlight, Private Dancer.
Yeah, and boy, this one was steamy. I mean, I can see the video for this in my mind because I watched it so many times, and my God, did I want to be her. And what's interesting is that it was so provocative because it was sort of about, well, it could be seen as being about prostitution, or the sense of ownership over, I'm a private dancer, a dancer for money, I'll do what you want me to do. And in the video, she's like she looks super sad the whole time. She never smiles the whole time. And so it was also a song about and a video about sex work. And it was probably the first time I was really aware of sex work as a concept. And, I was a teenager and, lots of hormones and stuff. I thought it was a very sexy video.
And do you know who wrote the song?
Who?
Mark Knopfler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for folks at home, that is the lead singer and lead guitar player and main songwriter for Dire Straits. But, yeah, I mean, especially during the 80s, having anything that was pro-sex work at all, even in the very, very slightest, was controversial. It's sort of controversial today, even though I do love the fact that there is a lot more open talk about the benefits of sex work. I think the fact that, the internet being what it is with stuff like OnlyFans out there, I think more people are realizing, that there can be positives to sex work out there, not only for themselves, but for other people as well. So, if it took a video to, get you not captivated, that's the wrong word, but to get you acclimated to the idea that, sex work is not the bad stuff that they say on Dragnet when I watch that show every week, or Law and Order, or whatever, that, these are people who have lives and that they're just doing a job. Beautiful thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's the next one?
The next one here is, and we had mentioned this earlier, this is a song that she did from the soundtrack from one of her big movies from the 80s, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's We Don't Need Another Hero.
Now, did you have this on your list? No, so this comes from me. Mm-hmm. And of course, I've loved her so much by this point, and I was so excited to see her on the big screen, and her character was just so cool, and had like the best earrings, and the best hair, and this like crazy headband, and I just loved her, and this song, All We Want Is Life Beyond the Thunderdome, just this idea of having a better life, that there's gonna be a better life, and that you don't have to be a hero to make that happen.
I don't know why I don't like the Mad Max films. I mean, George Miller, the director, and I believe the screenwriter for all of them, is an absolute legend. He's done some great work. If you haven't seen it already, 1982 Twilight Zone, the movie, he directed the segment Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with John Lithgow, which is the scariest, most fun half hour you were ever going to have. And I mean that in the best possible way. He's also responsible for some classic kids films. Babe, Pig in the City.
Oh, wow.
George Miller, that's him. Happy Feet.
Oh, wow.
He's responsible for that too. And I always really love the action directors like him and Robert Rodriguez who do challenge themselves by saying, what kind of stories can I say for kids? Because, there are some limitations as to what you can do, but you can still, if you're
Make a good adult film for children.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I just don't get why I don't like Mad Max, because let's take a look at a lot of the actors in the film too, like Mel Gibson. I don't know if I want to meet him personally, but as an actor, he's done some great movies.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Hardy from, the fourth Mad Max, of course. Charlize Theron, of course. I have a lot of respect for her as an actress. And there's somebody who, as far as acting goes, took a lot of cues from Tina Turner, in my opinion. And I mean that in the best possible way. But Mad Max just never did it for me. I've never been...
That sort of post-apocalyptic kind of thing, you're not into that?
I think my thing for me is, I love action, but it has to have some slight basis in a reality that works for me, if that makes sense.
Sure. Like
James Bond movies, even during the Roger Moore era, theoretically could happen in real life. Not going to. You're not going to have an evil villain that's going to have an undersea layer that can rise up from the bottom of the sea, but...
It's set on Earth.
Yeah.
During modern times,
Yeah, somebody with...
Whereas Beyond Thunderdome, we don't know where that is. We don't know where that's happening. We don't even know that that's on Earth.
Exactly. We don't know that information, and I guess that might be another thing too. It's just a story that I just can't relate to. So
I really like them. I really like all of them.
Also, too, I will say this. I've not seen them on the big screen. There are movies that just work better on the big screen. Like, I'm glad I got to see Gone with the Wind on the big screen, because I think if I had to sit through 4 hours of Scarlett O'Hara whining like a little bitch, I don't think I would have liked it. But I remember when, because it was a re-release in the 90s, and I brought my mother. It was when she was first starting to get sick, I believe. But, we were watching it and just watching, the Gone with the Wind with the classic music going by just on the big screen. It awed you. In a lot of ways, but and I think too that may be an element that is missing from me. That if I saw it on the big screen, maybe that the fact that it's on the big screen with surround sound could immerse me into the story more than just sitting in front of a TV. But I'm also not, exactly looking at the Hollywood theater, hoping and praying that those movies won't be there for, a watch. But, who knows? Maybe on a future episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, if we do another Battle of State Supremacy and I lose, we'll see what happens. All right, the next song here, I did not add this one, so we'll let you talk about it. Nutbush City Limits.
Nutbush City Limits. So this was a great song that I think Tina herself wrote, and it is about her hometown, Nutbush, Tennessee. And I'm from Tennessee, and so I had to, of course, pick this song, which is descriptive of a small town in the South. And that's where I'm from. So this is the kind of, kind of song I can really relate to.
Now, as a fellow Tennessean or a fellow volunteer, or however you want to put it, how is she viewed in Tennessee? I'm assuming.
I think a lot of people don't know she's from Tennessee. I think, she moved away when she was pretty young, and went on to such stardom, that people. It's racist, right? Like, people didn't care where she was from. She was marginal. Nobody asked her questions about who she was.
That is unfortunate and sad. but I'm also glad we were able to talk about it.
Yeah.
As someone from Tennessee, how do you view her? Are you proud that someone like her came from your home state?
Oh, sure. And it's, yeah, sure. Like, that sort of smacks of nationalism to me, like this idea that, oh, she's from my hometown or she's from my state or it's a U.S., based band or, and they're going to be better because they're from, I'm going to feel connected to them because they're from where I'm from. And I think we have to be really careful, even in cultural choices, that we're not buying into that idea is that, oh, she's from where I'm from, that is what makes her good.
That reminds me when The Rock was a bad guy. I love wrestling here, folks. If this is your first time hearing friends talking nerdy, on occasion I will talk about the history of pro wrestling and just wander on. So if you hear some snoring, I'll wake the professor up and then we'll continue. But The Rock, when he was a bad guy in the early 2000s, people would still laugh at what he said, but he would make fun of the audience. And there was one point where, there's a thing in wrestling called a pop. A cheap pop is an easy way to get a crowd to cheer for you. And the way to do that is, it's great to be here in Cleveland, Ohio. Yeah, type of deal.
Right.
And The Rock made the point of, oh, he said where I said, yay.
Yeah, it's just like when they do a concert, it's always like, all right, Portland. And, everybody screams. Mm-hmm. Why?
Well, I can only speak for myself. I mean, first of all, I do want to agree with your point that yes, focusing too much on on making your identity be about where you were born and the people that inhabited the life that you saw could lead to bad things down the road. On the other hand, I think it's not. It's a slippery slope. I think you can be proud of the fact, because a lot of times for me too, it's just conversation starters. I can say, hey, I knew this guy who his mother dated Bob Seger, and she crashed his van. She crashed a Silver Bullet van, and it's fun to be able to talk like that. And also too, it's like, if it's a situation too to where like you have someone who was famous and made it big and something that you like, that you respected, and they came from your neck of the woods. It's like if they can do it, maybe I got a chance. If that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, I think it's complicated culturally because I come from a very small culture, which is the culture of Southern Appalachia, and it is something that I want to preserve, skills and knowledge and experiences that I hope people remember because I think they have lessons for us. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm a little conflicted. I feel ambivalent about this. But I think I generally don't like nationalism in any form.
Thanks, Tim. No. Well, there was a track that we had on here that I realized that we doubled up on. So we don't have 15 tracks here, but I think we're about done here. Oh wait, there's one more.
One more. Of course there's one more. We
got to save the best for last here, folks. And this is the song that I think, for people of our generation made us go, ho, what? And I mean that in the best possible way. What's Love got to do with it?
Yeah, this was her best song in terms of its performance on the charts and its sales. So it was at number 1 in the U.S. Rock and roll charts for 3 weeks, which was pretty good back then. Definitely
a classic. It shows that synthesizers are not all that bad when done right. The 80s was definitely just a tad bit excessive with synthesizers, and I'm liking the fact now that we're at a point in time to where they are making, the synthesizer is making a bit of a comeback, not only in rock, but in like hip hop and other forms of music as well, but in a much more moderated way. But I think this song in particular, if you want to show a good example of 80s synth sound, you put this on. And because the reason I like it too is that it was created with the intention of having a classic sound feel with Tina's voice with quote unquote modern sensibilities. The music does sound, the music itself, not Tina's vocals, but the music does sound dated. It does sound like a song of its time. But so is River Deep Mountain High, and that's still a classic song. I mean, River Deep Mountain High is very much a quintessential 60s song.
Yeah.
If someone came out with something similar today, I don't think it would affect as many people as it did, just because it sounds so much like the 60s. And I think What's Love Got to Do with It falls into that category. Now she was able to also get a movie title out of this particular song as well, but definitely a classic, and just shows what she was. One hell of an artist. I mean, damn.
One hell of an artist, one hell of a performer. We will miss her. I will miss her spirit on earth. I know that she lived in France with her love.
Switzerland.
Oh, Switzerland. With her love, and that she had adopted 2 children as well as having 2 biological children. And I think she was happy at the end of her life. Every time I saw her on a talk show or whatever, she seemed radiant and happy.
And she was. And I think that's the lesson people should take from her life, and, use that as a way to inspire themselves too, because, everybody has troubles. Some people's troubles are worse than others, but, when they're happening to you, they're the worst in the world, and just knowing that if you still just grit your teeth, put your nose to the grindstone or whatever that saying is, and just keep on working, you could build some peace and happiness for yourself. Now, I'm not implying that, you could be rich and famous and end up retiring in Switzerland like Tina Turner did. That would be awesome if everybody could, have that happen to them. But it's not about achieving financial goals here by focusing on that fight like she did. It's about fighting for that peace. And she was able to get that.
Well, I think it's also about, just like you said, this idea, if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you never know what might happen. Like, the world is waiting for you. And it's only if you stop walking, or if you get stuck in a rut, or, you need that inspiration, that other artists can really jumpstart you.
Indeed. There's a couple for the drinking game, folks.
Indeed. And I think as we remember Tina, that it is important to remember that she was a vibrant and happy person at the end of her life. And, she leaves that legacy.
Yeah, she was 83, I believe. Like on average, most people generally will pass away, and then, around that age. So you have to say she lived a nice, long life. And for people like that, it's sad that their time is done. But on the other hand, I also feel like you did it. Mm-hmm. You did it. And I don't view this as a sadness. I view this as an honoring of her spirit. I mean, like you said, her spirit was vibrant. Even, to her last days in her 80s, it was excitement. You felt happy. You felt energized. She was like the audio version of a cup of coffee, mm-hmm. or something like that. And just, she will be missed. But like I said, her legacy helped a lot of artists out, especially a lot of women. Mm-hmm. And she was able to open some doors that, are still, that people are still trying to work really hard to shut, Mm-hmm. But she will be missed. She was a legend. And if you do anything after this, folks, go to our show description. We will have a link to. Now we use Apple Music here once again, but we'll have a link to the Apple Music playlist here, and just pop the music on and enjoy her legacy, because it goes for almost the entirety of modern recorded popular music.
Yeah.
I mean, that means she's had one hell of a long career. So, to Tina Turner, we raise our cups high. We honor your legacy.
Absolutely. Salute.
All right. I think that we'll wrap it up here for us this week, unless you had any other words you want to mention about either Tina Turner, your trip to Soak, the cats, or anything in the future that we might do.
I'm just looking forward to that episode about Soak, and I want to get to work on that.
Okay, I am definitely excited to hear that episode. Like I said, it's always been a dream of mine that, a podcasting partner, this whole Friends Talking Nerdy experience would, be able to create something on their own without me involved to be able to put up. I'm going to be so excited when we can do that. But we thank you all for listening.
Absolutely, and have a wonderful week.
Each Saturday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Good night, folks.
And folks, you're simply the best. How does this work again?
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.